Live from New York, it's Saturday Dave. Hey TCS TV viewers, it's Dave from the Camera Store and we are in New York City. What brought us here? The brand new Leica M11. Leica has brought us to New York City, one of my favorite cities to explore, especially with a camera that's so famous for street photography. Now this is the brand new M11 and they're calling it a milestone camera for a lot of really good reasons. It's very iconic on the outside, very similar fit and finish to what we're used to in the past. However, what's inside is what's very exciting. While we're in Manhattan, we're going to put our feet and the camera to their paces. Today we're starting on the south end of Manhattan and I'm going to try and kill Drew with a marathon walk and see what we can cover as we explore New York. When you first get your hands on a Leica M series body, you really feel that heritage. You really feel this great build quality, and there's no exception with this M11. Now they have done something unique. There's two versions of this camera. There's a silver version and a black version, which I have here. Now the black version is about 20% lighter than the silver version. That's because they've gone with an aluminum top plate rather than a brass top plate on the silver version. So the choice is kind of yours depending on the aesthetics that you want, and if you like the feeling of brass over aluminum, I guess. Now I went with the black one because I do like that it's a little bit lighter. If I'm carrying it around my neck, I don't have to worry about it so much. I'm okay with that. But I do love the build quality of it. There's no exception to what Leica has got going on. And as you sort of tour around the camera, you realize that it's a very simplistic camera. There's only 3 buttons on the back with an 8-way joystick on the side here, and it gives you sort of all the controls that I really need. They really want you to spend some quality time sort of setting the camera up how you want, and then just shooting with it. You've got a couple custom control buttons and the way they implement it is fantastic. So one, there's a function button on the back labeled as a function button. Simply hold that down and it gives you a whole host of options that you can customize to it. For me, I like the setting up so that's my live view on and off. But I've also got one up by the shutter button here and I'm using that for my ISO. I'm finding that works fantastic. And the rear dial by your thumb here is also a custom control as well. So I have it set up when I am pushing it. I can use my exposure compensation if I'm using it in any one of the program modes. Now, the way this camera is designed, we do have an ISO dial on the top left of the camera. Simply push it upwards and you can go from full manual to automatic to any other different ISO that you want to. Now an interesting thing about this camera when it comes to ISO is that they've really made it expanded. It's very cool. We can go down as low as 64 ISO, which I'm very excited about, but all the way up to 50,000 ISO. Now what I'm finding as I'm shooting with this camera is that I'm quite comfortable with it up to about 6400 ISO. From there on, it's sort of a personal choice if you want to go beyond that. But I am more excited about the 64 ISO because it allows that versatility to really slow your shutter speed down, really take your time. Take a lens like this and I can stop it down to f16, set it at ISO 64, and I'm getting a half second or a 2 second or 8 second exposure when I'm shooting the water. It really allows me to smooth things out. When it comes to the shutter dial here, we have anything from bulb all the way up to 1/4000th of a second. Now the interesting thing is, this camera will go up to 16,000th of a second when it comes to electronic shutter. Just as impressive as that is that we can now go down to a 1-hour exposure, and it just adds to how flexible that it is. There's really nothing I can't really go out and shoot and expose for properly. Now in the back of the camera we do have the LCD screen and it's really nice and bright and punchy and very, very crisp. And it has a kind of a trick feature. Although Leicas are not a stabilized camera system, you can, using live view, apply a stabilized image. If I want to put on like the 135 lens or something that has a little bit more of a reach to it, hand holding the camera can be a little bit problematic and it shows a lot of shake, but I can see a stabilized image through the rear screen to compose my shot. Now we turn our attention to the bottom of the camera, we have something that might polarize a few Leica enthusiasts. We have the removal of the bottom plate, like we've been used to for so many generations. Now, I'm okay with that, because I did find it kind of a nuisance to take it off, to change my battery, change my memory card. They've adopted the same kind of battery system as the Leica Q has, so it's simply a push in and the battery pops straight out. Now, something too that I've often forgot besides an extra battery is a memory card. Now, we've all been there before. I'm like, oh my God, I left the house without a memory card. What am I going to do? Super cool. They have included 64 gigabytes of internal memory in this camera. So if you want, I never have to take out the battery because everything's done internally. I can simply plug in the camera through USB-C, transfer my images, and charge my battery at the same time. This is a pre-production camera from Leica, but I have no doubt that the fit and finish on the delivered copies are going to be very similar, although there might be some changes to the firmware when we do get those. Let's talk about the sensor on this brand new M11. We have a brand new backside illuminated 60 megapixel sensor. That's a lot of resolution to talk about, so if you want to shoot down a little bit smaller, you can go 36 or 18. The cool thing is all of those resolutions are going to give you 14-bit color depth. Now what's nice is that at 60 megapixels we are at 14 stops of dynamic range, and if you need that extra one stop, if you shoot at 36 or at 18, you get 15 stops of dynamic range. Now usually when it comes to high resolution cameras, my computer just screams and I get frustrated and upset, but I'm not shooting nearly as much with the Leica camera as I am with other systems. Now we are getting full sensor readout with all these resolutions. Now I'm finding I'm shooting at 60 megapixels all the time. Why not? I have that resolution, I have amazing lenses, great quality optics, and the color rendition of this sensor is fantastic. We also have a ultra thin, high absorption, dual layer filter glass in front of the sensor, giving us really true colors. Now Leica's all about reproducing color accuracy, and I'm finding that the colors I'm getting out of this camera, even on the back screen here, are fantastic. The graduations, the tonality is all very impressive. And that ultra thin layer of glass also really helps with ghosting and flaring. This camera is producing some excellent image quality as to be expected. When it comes to shooting with this camera, we are limited to about 4.5 frames per second when it comes to that 60 megapixel range. However, that's not a really big deal at all. I'm not finding it's holding me back whatsoever. This isn't a camera that I'm shooting sports and action with. It's not really designed for that. I'm finding 1 frame per second is fine with me when it comes to shooting a camera like this. So the buffer rate on this at 60 megapixels is just fine. If you step it down to 36 or even 18, the buffer goes significantly up. The other big change to the Leica M11 is the fact that the metering is based on the sensor itself. No longer are we using the older style of metering, we're using it off the sensor itself, which is going to give us a more accurate reading when it comes to exposure. Overall, in shooting this camera, I'm finding that extra resolution is really intoxicating. I've talked about that in the past. Having a high resolution sensor really allows you to pull details out and take a scene and sort of cut it into smaller segments with plenty of resolution, paired up with Leica's amazing optics, is producing some fantastic quality images. One thing I'm finding with this M11 is the flexibility, especially when it comes to ISO. We came down here to find a nice shot of the Brooklyn Bridge, and I got to experiment with a little higher ISO. This shot of these two characters here that call themselves real New Yorkers was shot at ISO 2000. You can see it's a little bit grainy, but very, very acceptable. What I really want to do is go down to the low level of ISO 64, where I'm shooting the Brooklyn Bridge here. It allows me to shoot a half-second exposure with this lens and still get that nice sort of blur of the headlights of cars going across. Now on the other side, you can shoot up to 50,000 ISO, although I'm finding 6400 is where my comfort level with this camera so far. Now we've been walking all day today here in New York City, and it's been fantastic because there's so much stuff to see. However, I'm not worried about the battery life on this new Leica M11. And the reason is we have a brand new 1800 milliamp battery. Now I've been shooting all day and I'm down to about half battery, so I have nothing but good things to say about the battery life on this camera. Now, the thing is, let's say I only brought one battery and I'm running out of juice. The nice thing that Leica has done in the bottom of the camera is put a USB-C port to it, because I can charge it with any USB-C cable. It means I reduce the amount of clutter when I'm traveling with. I only need one power cable for my phone and for this camera. Now I am perplexed a little bit why they put it on the bottom of the camera. I guess they wanted to keep it nice and clean. However, if you plug it in, you can't put the camera down on the table on its base like I prefer. It's a little bit of an interesting thing. I guess Leica wanted to keep a really clean design. I would have preferred to see the USB-C port onto the side. So after a very long day of walking around with this brand new Leica M11, what are my first impressions of this camera? Well, it feels very much like other M series bodies, which is a very good thing. Leica has done a very good job of building upon their heritage and their legacy. Older lenses certainly fit on this camera. The fit and finish, everything feels so at home if you're already an existing Leica user. The brand new 60 megapixel sensor I'm really quite fond of. Now, sometimes I think 60 megapixels is kind of ridiculous for a camera system, but with Leica I'm finding I really like it. And the reason is I'm not shooting a ton of frames per second with this camera. It's not that style. I'm taking a lot less frames today on my on my huge walk around everywhere in New York. I'm taking far less images, but I'm getting a much higher percentage of keepers with the photos that I'm taking. And of those keepers, I have that much more resolution to play with. So I'm quite happy that I do have up to 60 megapixels to play with. Now, of course, this is a manual focus camera, so it does take a little bit more time and care and attention to get the shot that you want. And I found myself walking around with this 50mm lens, which is a little long for me. I do prefer a 35. But what I found myself doing is looking for the shot, finding what I really wanted to see, getting myself in the right spot for it, and then taking my time to really get the focus as critical as I wanted to make it. Now I can work with this, and it's certainly something that becomes an extension of you the more that you use it. And with this camera, as I got later in the day, I really became attuned to where I needed to be, where the focus ring needed to be when I got to the subject I wanted to photograph. And the results are fantastic. I love the look I'm getting out of this. The quality of optics and the quality of the sensor produce some amazing quality images. The fact that I also didn't have to worry about a battery because I can easily charge it through USB-C wherever I was. And little touches that I think are really unique and I think other cameras should take advantage of is the built-in 64 gigabytes worth of memory. That means I never actually have to open up my camera if I only want to use it through the USB-C port. I think that's a really impressive touch to have in a camera like this. Now, the rear screen is higher resolution, and I was using focus peaking a lot, but I found myself enjoying the viewfinder experience as well. I mean, being able to use it as a rangefinder does take practice, but I was able to get better and better with it the more I got used to it. Now, it's not my first time with it, so I knew kind of what to expect, but it's always a little bit of a learning curve if you've been coming from an autofocus system. So overall, I think Leica has done a fantastic job with this camera. The quality of files are phenomenal, and that's part and parcel due to the brand new sensor, their whole philosophy, and the quality of optics that are available to it. Now, there are a lot of other cameras on the market, but there's nothing quite like a Leica. And that's because they have been doing this for so long, and they found something that works a long time ago, and they've carried it into the future here. This brand new M11 gives you everything that you want in a camera, and when you're walking around, and I'm discreetly trying to capture some moments in life, I feel like I'm creating something special. And maybe it's because I'm taking a little more time to do that. But what I'm finding is that the quality of shots I'm getting from it and the whole experience of shooting is there. And that's what I really appreciate with this. There's something that I'm doing that's very special to me, and I like the results I'm getting from it, so I have to give it to Leica. I think they've got a winner on their hands here, and I think if you have the opportunity to try one out, it's well worth spending some quality time with. Now, I of course want to know what you guys think of this brand new Leica M11. Are you happy with the specs? Were you expecting something more? Are they omitting something that you really, really wish they would have done? Make sure you leave comments down below. Follow us on Instagram, and please subscribe. Hit the notification bell, and we'll catch you again next time. We finally made it to Radio City Music Hall, and if you like more content like this from New York City, please let us know. If you want to check out our more recent episodes, click up here. And if you're a Canadian and you want to shop local, check out thecamerastore.com down here.